See, what goes on in the digestive system is ingestion. You ingest the food, right? You eat. And then there is a mechanical digestion. You use your teeth to break all that food into smaller pieces. Mechanical digestion. And now you're mixing the food with saliva, right? So you have 3 pairs of salivary glands. Sublingual gland, and that is the that's sublingual. Below the tongue, that's the tongue. Below the tongue is sublingual gland, right? And here is the submandibular gland, right? 3 pairs, submandibular. That's the mandible. You can recognize that. Submandibular, and that's the parotid gland. This is the one right here. That's the one that hurts when you laugh too much,
That's
right?
that one over there.
Right. So sublingual gland, submandibular gland, and parotid gland. So they release all the, they release the saliva. Saliva has mucus, right? Mucus is a protein called mucin. Mucin plus water is the mucus. And it also has salts and ions and a little bit of urea too in it. And what else it has is the lysozyme. Lysozyme kills the bacteria in your mouth, right? Lysozyme, enzyme that splits the bacteria, okay? Lysozyme. And it also has amylase, the enzyme. Amylase starts the digestion of starch. That's what you have in the saliva. So now, food in the mouth is all broken down into pieces with your teeth and very well mixed with this saliva. And saliva has the enzyme amylase that starts the digestion of starch. Remember that. You know, food doesn't stay in your mouth long enough for the digestion to complete. It just starts the digestion of starch and then we swallow it, right? So you ingest solid food. Now the food is semi-solid. We call it bolus. So you use your tongue to make it up into a round bolus, and that's what we swallow. Swallowing is quite a feat, right? You close your lips and you bring your teeth together, right? So anteriorly, the mouth is a closed chamber. And now the tongue muscles retract, they contract, pulling the food backwards, right? As soon as it touches that soft palate, uvula we call it, then you automatically swallow. It's a reflex activity and you swallow. Now, as you are swallowing, see this? That's the epiglottis, right? Remember the epiglottis? Epiglottis closes that glottis here so that we don't want the food going into the trachea, right? See here, that's the throat, right? See your trachea is opening into the throat, esophagus opening into the throat. This is the common passage. We want the food only to go into the esophagus, not into the trachea, right? So this is the epiglottis. It closes, the glottis is that opening. It closes that, so food goes only through the esophagus. That's the esophagus. Esophagus is just provides passageway for the food. No enzymes get released here, right? So it's just providing passage for the food. Bolus is just traveling through the esophagus. How the bolus travels is by peristalsis. Like say food is here, the muscle, say here is the food, that's the food. The muscles in the esophagus, just above the food, they constrict, pushing the food down. And then the food is here now, the muscles just above the food constrict, pushing the food down like this. The contractions spread like waves. That's what is called peristalsis. That's how the food moves throughout the gastrointestinal tract. These are all smooth muscles, right? It's amazing how they control the movement of this food automatically, right? So that's the peristalsis. Now the food comes into the stomach, right? Stomach here, you can see there is a esophageal sphincter or cardiac sphincter, right? And that cardiac sphincter muscles are always circular muscles that close or open a tube. So that's the sphincter muscle here. So it opens only one way, usually, right? The food is only allowed to go from esophagus to the stomach, not the other way around, unless you ingested some toxins and things like that, right? Food poisoning, you ingested something, alcohol, too much alcohol, and it gets absorbed into the blood, goes to the brain. Remember in the medulla oblongata, the vomiting center, that's where you have. So there is a place where there is no blood-brain barrier. Everything in the blood comes in contact with the brain. Brain recognizes, immediately sends signals here to open for this esophageal sphincter to open the wrong way. It opens the wrong way and then you throw it up, right? So that's the quickest, easiest way to get rid of all the toxins, and instead of getting it, your body has to process everything, otherwise your liver has to detoxify. To avoid that, the quickest way to get rid of the toxins is by throwing up, right? So that's when this sphincter opens in the wrong way. Otherwise, only allows food to go from esophagus to the stomach. Now, once the food comes into the stomach has 3 layers of muscles. Everywhere else you only have 2 layers, circular muscles and longitudinal muscles. Here you have oblique muscles also. So the stomach is for temporary storage of food, first of all. Stomach can expand. See the rugae? These are the folds. When they unfold, it can accommodate up to 4 liters of food. Okay? And so now that is temporary storage. And also, stomach releases the gastric juice. What is in the gastric juice? Hydrochloric acid, protein, pepsin for protein digestion, and renin. Renin kind of curdles the milk protein. That's a lot more renin is secreted in little kids than in adults. Okay, so that's the gastric juice. And stomach muscles also, there's a lot of churning that goes on. It's called segmentation. They contract and relax. So mixing food thoroughly with the gastric secretions. Right? So more than 3 liters of gastric juice is released here every day. So you're releasing about 1 to 1.5 liters of saliva and more than 3 liters of gastric juice. Now that these muscles contract and relax, churning and mixing very well that food with the gastric secretions. Now the food, you swallowed the semi-solid, right, bolus. Now the food is semi-liquid. We call it chyme or chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. So the stomach is, the pH is very, very low, about 3, 4, because of the acid. The acid that gets released here is so strong, you put it on the rug, it'll burn a hole through the rug. That's how strong it is. But stomach has a very thick coating of mucus. There are mucus secreting glands that secrete mucus. Goblet cells, remember? The mucus secreting, they are called mucus neck cells that secrete lots of mucus. Parietal cells that secrete HCl. And there are also G cells, right? Or chief cells that release pepsinogen, like that. So stomach is only for protein digestion. Since, even though you have some amylase that came along with the food that from the saliva, the amylase won't work here because the pH is really low. So stomach is only for protein digestion. The pH is really low here, acidic here, right? So once the food is digested, then it's now have to go into the duodenum. That's the next part of the digestive system. That's the U-shaped first part of the small intestine. And now, stomach can accommodate a lot of food. All of that can't go into the duodenum at the same time, right? That's why you have this pyloric sphincter. Pyloric sphincter allows little bit to come to the duodenum at a time, right? Little bit at a time. So as that food comes to the duodenum, and duodenum receives bile from the liver. Right? Bile from the liver. Remember the bile duct, right? The bile canaliculi, bile comes from the broken red blood cells, right? When the red blood cells are broken down, iron is stored here, all the protein broken down into amino acids, they get recycled, and what becomes the bile is salts and pigments. All that get collected through that bile canaliculi, and they join to become the right and left hepatic duct, which join to become the common hepatic duct, and that's the bile duct. Through the bile duct, it comes to the duodenum. See this, that green here, it opens into the duodenum. And now, what does bile do? Bile doesn't have any enzymes. It only has salts and pigments. So what we call emulsification of fats. That's what they do. So the best way to describe the emulsification is, you take a cup, right? Cup of water. Add some salt in it, right? Water, salt, and then add a chunk of butter in it, right? And then you close the lid and shake it. right? So you added a big chunk of butter in it. There is salt and water.